Hey everyone, welcome to the Free Assange Vigil. My name is Steve Poikonen, and my co-host is Andrew Smith. We are very happy to be here tonight. We have two incredible guests, but real quick, there are 32 days until the beginning of the second round of Julian Assange's extradition hearing. 3,418 days since the beginning of his illegal and arbitrary detention. 370 days since he was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy and sold to Belmarsh prison and the for a $4.2 billion IMF loan. It is my sincere privilege to introduce two incredible gentlemen. Both have been on the vigil before, and I'm just very pleased that they're here. Tim Canova and Ian Schlackman. How are you tonight, gentlemen?
Hey, doing good.
Very happy to be here. Thank you.
I thought we might kick this off and do it sort of, round table and cabin style. And I would like to start with election integrity, because it's an issue that's near and dear to my heart, but also yours as well, Tim, and you, Ian. And it's something that kind of fell by the wayside during this travesty of a Democratic presidential primary. So Tim, if you'd like to start us off and let us tell the folks about your petition, and we can just go from there.
Sure. Thanks. It always does fall by the wayside in this country. It's interesting. People say that Americans have a certain type of amnesia, historical amnesia, but we're not talking about amnesia about things that happened decades ago. The amnesia is so immediate. It's like it's the last election, whether it was 2 years ago or 2 weeks ago. Americans have a way of saying, well, that looked like it might have been rigged. Time to move on and get on to the next subject. It's almost like this attention deficit disorder that goes on in this country. So, I don't want to go on for a long time about my own experience here in South Florida. I know a number of you already know about it. We ran against Wasserman Schultz, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, in 2016. She was head of the DNC at the time. We thought we beat her. We had an amazing grassroots campaign, hundreds of door knockers, volunteers, field organizers. Our internal field numbers showed us crushing her. It looked good. We raised a lot of money in small donations. We had all the momentum on our side. And then the polls closed. They declare her the winner. I asked to see the ballots. They throw out the ballots. I mean, that's the long and short of it. It plays out over a series of months. We bring a lawsuit. They destroy all the ballots while the lawsuit is pending. These are violations of state and federal law. No prosecutions, no criminal prosecutions. We go at it again. 2 years later, I run as an independent. A week or two before the election, there's some Republican news outlet that says this is neck and neck. There's a Republican poll reportedly that has me neck and neck with Wasserman Schultz in a dead heat. The polls close. They say I lost, and I got the same ridiculously low percentage in every demographic group. Doesn't matter what demographic: whites, blacks, Hispanics, males, females, Republicans, Democrats, independents. Doesn't matter what precinct, where in the precinct's located in the district, what the precinct size is. For every demographic group and every precinct, I got the same exact percentage. The experts, national experts in statistics, leading experts, they say this is just statistically impossible. So we'd like to see the software. We can't see the software because the software is proprietary. And this isn't just with me. This is nationwide. 98% of the districts in this country, they have electronic voting machines with proprietary software. You can't inspect them. If you want to inspect the ballots afterwards, if you don't spend the money for a lawsuit, good luck. And if you do, I guess they can just throw out the ballots anyway and get away with it. So it's really, I'll try to temper my language. It's an unacceptable, outrageous, shameful election system we have in this country. Every major democracy has banned the electronic voting machines. Great Britain, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, South Korea just did. Australia has. South Korea, after 18 years with paper ballots, but the paper ballots are counted by passing them through scanning machines, electronic scanning machines that can be rigged. South Korean voters petitioned, 200,000 petition signatures. They got rid of the electronic voting machines. This will be the first election in South Korea in over 18 years where they don't have the machine ruling over them. So anyway, that's kind of the long and short of it. I think a lot of experts say that the ideal election system is having hand-counted paper ballots that are counted by hand in public on election night at the local precinct level, and that the results are reported immediately, publicly at the local precinct level. If you have a system like that, there's less chance that there can be election rigging. So that's where we want to move to. I know there are a lot of election integrity activists that I have a lot of respect for, that they say, well, that's ideal. We're not going to get there. So what we have to do is inspect the digital scanned images after the election. Good luck on that. Hardly anyone has the resources, the time, the money to inspect hundreds of thousands of digital scanned images, and they're digital, which means those could even be altered by someone who has a supercomputer, like an intelligence agency maybe. And, you know, when you try to find out who's behind this election rigging, there are three companies that dominate the industry of electronic voting machines. ES&S, Election System and Software, Hart Intercivic, and Dominion Voting Systems. And there's very little information on all three of these companies. My favorite is ES&S because they've got control of the machines and the software all over Florida. And when you try to find out about ES&S, it turns out it's not a public corporation. It doesn't have to publish very much information about itself. It's owned by a private equity firm called the McCarthy Group that's based in Omaha, Nebraska, and had ties to Chuck Hagel, the Republican senator. So you just don't know, is there a dark market on these elections? Who's rigging them? How do you prove it? The only viable system is paper ballots counted by hand in public. So is Congress going to pass something like that? Tulsi Gabbard introduced a bill. The bill was just for paper ballot backups, not for actually counting the original votes on paper. So her bill is good, but it's not perfect, and it doesn't matter. The House hasn't passed it. The House and Senate can't get on the same page about election reform. I don't think they want to. I think the duopoly likes it the way it is. However, President Donald Trump, our flawed, fearless president, whatever you think of the guy, you know, I don't want to use bad adjectives. This is not to beat up on Donald Trump right now. The fact is, Donald Trump, in a press conference in 2018, endorsed paper ballots, and in several tweets ever since has talked about paper ballots. So we have a petition. It's at the White House website. I think most petitions are futile efforts in futility. This one, I'm hopeful, because if we get 100,000 signatures by the end of April, the White House, by its own rules, is obligated to at least respond to the petition. So we're basically asking Donald Trump to do what he's been tweeting about, to put up or shut up, to come out with an executive order, not for state elections. The federal government doesn't have jurisdiction over that, but for federal elections in November, under Donald Trump's emergency powers. We're in a national emergency. He's got both inherent and statutory powers, 135 or more statutes passed by Congress, giving the president all kinds of authority during a national emergency. Already, you've had for several years, the nation's election system has been declared a critical national infrastructure under all kinds of legislation, giving the Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction over those elections. Okay, Donald Trump, use that jurisdiction, use your emergency powers, and order paper ballots to be counted by hand in the November federal elections. That's what our petition is. Folks can find the petition a number of ways. They can go to our website at progressforall.org. It's available right there on the first page. They could go to, I think, my Twitter account. I think it's Tim_Canova. It's, I think, pinned to the very top of the Twitter account. We posted on Facebook. And if you fill out this petition, the White House then sends you an email. Open up your email, click on the link to confirm it, and you'll be signed on. So we're asking folks to please sign the petition and please spread the word through social media. Try to get as many friends as you can to sign this petition as soon as possible.
I just put the link to that in one of the chats. Where's that echo coming from? Anyone? Okay.
Could you turn off your background blur, Tim? It makes the video super laggy.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
No,
No,
that's
you're
fine.
fine. This is a new software for everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say, Ian, if you could, you've had a little bit of a different experience as far as election integrity issues go. Could you talk a little bit about what happened to you earlier this year?
Lefty.
Well, I certainly can. It's very funny that you bring this up. I think some of the things that Tim's talking about are super relevant, incredibly important. Some of the things that come to mind are the Democrats making people vote in the middle of a pandemic, which is absolutely insane. The other thing, is that we see this in local elections here in Baltimore all the time, how absolutely insane the Democratic machine could be, cracking down on independents trying to run for office. I could go on and on about things we've seen in Baltimore City, drunk election judges and stuff like that. But if you're talking about specifically what happened to me earlier this year, I guess you're talking about what happened to me with the Green Party. So essentially, I give, at the end of 2016 election, Jill Stein did something that I think was a very good thing and went after the electric voting companies. Tim probably knows more about this than I do, in fact. But, we were very proud of her in the Green Party for doing that, fighting very hard to get the software opened up. I think it was a good thing to do, even though switching to paper ballots certainly seems like a lot simpler and a much easier option. So 2019, I decided to run for president with the Green Party. Lots of different factions in the Green Party. You basically now have a Howie Hawkins faction and a Dario Hunter faction. I can kind of go into that a little bit. It was a very good experience starting out. The other candidates, there were like 7 candidates running in total. Fantastic experience, a lot of camaraderie between the candidates. But pretty quickly, it was made apparent that Howie Hawkins has been selected to be the next Green Party nominee. It was clear as day. I mean, states were calling on him personally to give special speeches that no other candidates were being invited to give. And then the Green Party came out with a rubric where they basically wanted all candidates to get a certain amount of signatures and raise a certain amount of money. And it goes a little further than that. They actually wanted folks to commit to being, let me just take a step back. So basically, at the end of the election, when I decided to drop out of the Green Party election and leave the Green Party, I found out I kind of demanded an answer on something that I had a suspicion about, which is that the Howie Hawkins team for president actually wrote the rules for all the Green Party candidates running for president. Early in 2019, we received a letter from Andrea Merida, Howie Hawkins' campaign manager, basically asking us to sign on to this weird document that had all these kind of random numbers of signatures and amounts have to raise, pledging not to work with other parties, and then also pledging to basically get the Green Party's vote count as high as possible through what the Howie Hawkins campaign deemed like the best way to do so. Getting on as many ballots as possible, even other people's ballot lines, all this kind of junk that they're doing. I didn't sign on to it. I thought it was ridiculous. At the time, I remember other candidates questioning her because she was actually also a co-chair of the party, Miss Merida. And we asked, are you asking us as a co-chair or are you asking us as a campaign manager for Hawkins? And that's when it became clear that a lot of these folks just weren't really playing fair. And they were writing these rules with the intention to give Hawkins an unfair advantage. So stuff just kind of got a lot worse from that point. But finally, at the end of 2019, some brave whistleblower from the Presidential Campaign Support Committee of the Green Party finally admitted that, yeah, the Hawkins folks actually did write the rules. And there was a concerted effort to kick all of the other candidates off the ballot.
Can I jump in here real quick, Ian?
Yeah, go ahead.
There were rules that said you couldn't work with other parties, but Howie Hawkins is also on the ballot for another party. I mean, how does that work?
Well, it goes back to this old rivalry between people who are now on the Hawkins team and Jill Stein. So we're talking this rivalry. The let's say take the pro Hawkins faction consists of Kevin Zeese, Margaret Flowers, Andrea Merida, and a couple other folks. this team really wants to do what I call a Green Party purity project. They don't want the Green Party working with Democrats at all. Not allowed. They don't want the Green Party working with other parties because other parties may be influenced by the Democrats, such as the Working Families Party. So they're really about just running green, no corporate money. It sounds okay, but the problem is that there's no unity. They don't want any unity with other political parties. And I know Kevin Zeese and Margaret very, very well. They are folks right here in Maryland. I've been over their house many times, and I was thrilled to meet them at first, to be frank with you, as an impressionable 20-something. But pretty quickly I realized that there was this major beef in the party between them, Andrea, and Jill Stein. And they just did not like Jill Stein. They did not like the way Jill Stein ran her campaign, completely opposed it. And they kind of wanted that. They wanted the presidential campaign for themselves. But the problem was that even though people may know outside the party Margaret Flowers as being a single payer advocate, inside the party Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flowers don't have the best reputation. Andrea Merida's reputation in the Green Party is horrible. And basically it stems from the fact that they are listserv bullies. I mean, that's the best way to say it. If you oppose them over a listserv, they just jump on you. I mean, you can't get a word in edgewise. These folks just sit at home all day, massively producing a pretty atrocious arguments against you if you try to oppose them. So any working class person can't really function in the Green Party nationally because of this kind of faction. And that's something that Jill Jill honestly, quite frankly, opposed them as well. So they went and chose Howie Hawkins to be their candidate because Hawkins has a lot of positive respect in the party. He's one of the party founders back when the party was the Rainbow Coalition and all that. They didn't realize at the time, though, that Howie Hawkins actually was a member of another party, another national party, the Socialist Party USA, and that he intended to run for that party's ballot line as well. So hilariously, that camp wrote a rule saying that, before they picked Hawkins as the nominee, that you can't be a member of another party. And then all of a sudden, when they backed Hawkins, they had to instantly reverse their own rule and say, oh, that rule didn't mean what we said it meant. It doesn't mean that. Howie Hawkins can run with as many ballot lines as he wants. So they had to kind of instantly do a double take there. But of course, that rule would have applied to any of the other candidates and did. Frankly, I was kind of threatened if I stayed with the DSA, I would be, kicked out of the presidential campaign because of that. It was a complete double standard. And it just kind of goes to show you how that faction kind of functions. And then on top of that, you see just kind of weird stuff going on too, where then Hawkins went on to try to get the Peace and Freedom ballot line, which is pretty much the PSL's ballot line in California, even though the PSL, which is the Party for Socialism and Liberation, is very similar to a group that I belong to, the People's Power Assembly, or Socialist Unity Party, I should say. And we believe in being anti-imperialist. So I don't know why Hawkins, which is a soft imperialist, as Ben Norton calls him, I kind of call him a pro-imperialist, to be frank with you, would want to go after the ballot line for an anti-imperialist organization, such as the PSL's ballot line. But there he was spending money to try to get that ballot line as well. So I just feel a lot of this stuff, I think what we saw happening with Bernie Sanders eventually supporting Joe Biden, calling him his good friend, never really wanting to attack him, is the same kind of thing that's happening behind the scenes in the Green Party, unfortunately. Jill Stein and Hawkins are friends. Even though essentially Hawkins has been on like Primo Nutmeg Show or Ron Placone's calling Jill Stein, essentially a Russian asset, or an unwilling Russian asset, we should say. Criticizing her for taking the trip to the Moscow dinner. Because their friendship, because of respectability politics, this isn't really going to be a problem for Hawkins. He's probably going to rise and get the nomination eventually. There's really only one candidate left at this point actually opposing him.
So I mean, it's just fascinating. The DNCing of the Green Party is something that people really need to be aware of. It First of all, we don't have free and fair elections, but if you're going to try and work within a party apparatus, the fractioning and the infighting, it makes it so much harder, at least for the Greens, to get that magical 5% number. Howie Hawkins has said some really troubling things about free speech in general, and Julian Assange, and dead name Chelsea Manning, like
Multiple times.
Yeah. And that was something that, like, when me and you and Andrew were in front of the William Truesdale Detention Center, which Chelsea was and Jeremy Hammond was, like, I, in my head, was hearing that Howie Hawkins interview, and it made me furious. And so to watch him be coronated is certainly troubling. Tim, do you have any thoughts about this?
I haven't kept up too closely on Green Party politics. I've known Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flowers for some years just as issue activists. I think going way back on trade issues, it's hard for me to remember, but it's been a lot of years ago since I first met them. I've had a number of great conversations with Jill Stein over the last few years and was very impressed with her. She has taken the time to learn, to understand the issues that we've been talking about rigged elections, and to stand up and try to do something about it. It takes a lot of courage for someone in her position to do that. So I've heard a little bit before this conversation about this rift that's growing within the Green Party. So things that Ian is saying is not a surprise to me at all. I've heard much the same kind of critique of Howie Hawkins. I've never met Howie Hawkins or had a conversation with him, so I don't really have a strong opinion about him. But, again, I think the world of Jill Stein. I hope she might be able to weigh in and help with our petition drive as well. And, just generally speaking, I'm very supportive of the idea of third-party politics in this country. Whether it's through proportional representation or what's in the Green Party platform, ranked choice voting. The system is very much rigged for this corrupt duopoly. So it's disappointing to hear about the problems that are happening in the Green Party. And I don't know, is this inevitable? Whenever you have a party, you're going to have people who are going to try to take control and use the rules to keep other people from rising in the party. I don't know.
Well, if I could, do you guys mind? I guess I'll just go ahead.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that I said this. I just did another interview the other day, and I this is a very strange position for me to be in. I'm an enormous Jill Stein fan still. I was a volunteer for her. I worked on her campaign a little bit. I've given her advice. We used to talk regularly. But I've just been incredibly disappointed at the level of respectability politics going on here. I don't feel like that's gonna lead us down a path of creating a true electoral third party when we're not even following our own rules when it comes to the things that we care about, like the things that Tim said, proportional representation, other electoral reforms. It's just very, very disappointing. And I'll say this, and this is a very awkward thing for me to say because I'm a revolutionary socialist, and I don't, I get along with a lot of these folks, but I can't vouch for them. But the Libertarian Party is actually now kind of taken the flame of democracy and is one of the last places left that I think you're going to find a larger third party. I've also done interviews with the Transhumanist Party, which had a completely different perspective on how to do a national race. And I give them a ton of credit because we had about 7 people in the Green Party running, and that was all, just 7. And if you look at the ballot, if you go to your local election, whenever it's time for you to vote, and you look at the Democratic ballot line, you're going to see way more than the folks that they tell you about on the evening news. Because at the end of the day, even the Democratic Party doesn't take away your right to be on the ballot. in the primary. Some states, like Florida, do have a signature requirement. Some states, like Pennsylvania, have a signature requirement. Maryland doesn't if you have a ballot line. So, I mean, it just depends on the state. But the Green Party has opposed signatures and raising a certain amount of money to get on the ballot. So we just find it very strange to be in this position. But getting back to it, I think another party that I always highlight as a contrast is the Transhumanist Party. Formerly just this one party person with Zoltan Istvan. Now they ran 9 candidates, more than the Green Party. They had scheduled primaries throughout. Then they did, you must register to be a transhumanist member by X date. Okay, everyone by registered on X date got 1 ballot and was able to vote. And then they picked their candidate and the primary was over. That's a good system. It's literally creating a popular vote system very quickly and clearly within your own party. That's a thing that I would like to see replicated. And I still can't understand or get a clear answer why we can't do that within the Green Party. Instead, we're emulating the failed politics of the DNC. Instead, we're saying, well, all the other parties out there, like the Democrats, which we hate, are doing state-by-state level voting access, which is the law in the country. I mean, that's the way the Democrats have done it. That's the way they've written the law. They've written the law where each single state has the ability to do complete ballot access on their own and can make up their own rules to whatever they want, basically. But the Green Party, because we're an independent party, in almost every state can just kind of do whatever it wants. The state doesn't really bother us. We could, in Maryland, we could literally write in anybody. We could just, they call us up, they say, who's your nominee? And we tell them, that's it. It's as simple as that. So I really get a little annoyed that we're emulating a failed system. We don't want to be like the Democratic Party, whether that's at the ballot box or whether that's at, behind the scenes with the respectability politics. We need to show a better example. And I hold up that Transhumanist Party as a better example.
And can I jump in for a moment? What Ian's describing, a party that doesn't follow its own rules, of course, it's reminiscent of what the DNC has argued in court in the DNC class action fraud lawsuit that the Becks, the Beck law firm of Jared and Elizabeth Beck, has brought against the DNC. And in federal court, the lawyers for the DNC argued that they don't even have to follow their own charter, their own rules on how to nominate someone, that they can choose their own nominee in violation of their rules and I think the lawyer said, in a smoke-filled back room.
Yeah, that was Bruce Spiva. Yeah, we were fortunate enough to have the Becks on a couple of weeks ago. And shortly after that, they came on my show, Slow News Day, and we had a fascinating conversation. But one of the things that Jared reminded me of is that Bruce Spiva also said, technically, there's no such thing as a Democrat, which is just absolutely fascinating to me, that you can have this private club responsible for pre-selecting candidates, and it basically, they admitted in court that the DNC is a money laundering operation, and because they don't have to follow their own rules or bylaws, F off, we're and that was more or less it. Now that suit is heading towards the Supreme Court. Jared and Elizabeth filed on March 18th. And they are hoping to be able to present it sometime this summer.
Yeah, they briefed it. I know that.
So to kind of pivot the conversation a little bit, we had a lot of news here in the last 2 or 3 weeks about Julian's court case. He was denied bail amid the pandemic, just as the United Kingdom started releasing prisoners. They attempted to extort the name of his partner and his children in an attempt to say, hey, if you're going to file for bail, we're going to release their name to the public. She has since went forward, revealing her identity, the identity of their children, in a very heartfelt video It's an 11-minute video that you can find over on the WikiLeaks channel, and then there's a shorter 6-minute version of it that came out in a couple different publications. I was wondering if you, Ian, could weigh in a little bit about like what your thoughts are amid the basically failure to release Julian during this pandemic, and also the larger question of this just being a show trial in general.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. We in Maryland, well, okay, so in the People's Power Assembly, and I think you're seeing this now. I just watched a PSL live stream before coming on, and PSL seems to be talking about the exact same thing, which is basically prisoner solidarity in this time of COVID-19. My comrades over at People's Power Assembly are getting phone calls weekly from prisoners who are experiencing the most horrific conditions in Maryland jails. We're talking folks that are forced to be around people that clearly have either some kind of illness or probably COVID-19. And when people speak out about it and complain to guards, guess what? The guards literally beat the shit out of them. I hope I could curse. I apologize. Okay. So it's absolutely disgusting behavior that we're seeing in the prisons here in Maryland. And then what we're hearing is nationally, this is the exact same thing. We're seeing this all over the country. And like I think we've pointed out a couple of different times now, folks disappear in prison. Folks commit suicide in prison that go in completely healthy. All of a sudden they've committed suicide and no one really knows why, and no one's really given an explanation. Just that the guards say, "Well, your son's dead. Your brother's dead. Don't ask any more questions. Sue us or take us to court if you want more information." And then they often stonewall. And that's the fear. That's the fear with Julian Assange, is that they're just going to say, "Oh, look at that. He died of COVID-19, and it's not our fault. And have a nice day." I mean, that's the incredibly legitimate fear. The man is obviously in terrible health. From what I understand, he had a previous lung injury, so he's extra susceptible to COVID-19. He was previously reported to be in terrible health even before this. It's just, completely ridiculous that we're seeing him still in there. But here in the U.S., and the U.S. is behind a lot of these all these extradition charges, we're seeing calls for prisoners to be released that are nonviolent. I mean, I'd release all the prisoners. I'm a prison abolitionist. That's another story. And we're also seeing baby prisons, child jails, demanding to be emptied at this point in time. Still haven't done it here in Maryland. And from what I understand, New York either. So, this has to be a demand that we keep up, because we can't just let everyone in prison die. And that certainly includes Julian Assange. The U.S. state would love nothing more than to see that happen. I can guarantee you that's what they're thinking.
Well, the thing that kills me about it is that the UK's reasoning behind not releasing Julian is, well, we can't let him out because we haven't convicted him of anything. Like that's it. That's their statement, because he's in there on remand as a political prisoner. He already served his ridiculous and nonsensical and illegal sentence for skipping bail. That was done in, I believe, September of last year, and is just now in this Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom, 23 hours a day on lockdown. When they bring him out for a half an hour of exercise, he's with everybody else that they let out at one time. There's no social distancing practices or anything like that. They're in a little courtyard where they walk around for a half an hour in circles or whatever, do some jumping jacks, and then you're back in solitary. You're back by yourself. You're back in your cell. And it is just, this entire case is so emblematic, and we're watching the rule of law die in real time. And Tim, you're a constitutional lawyer. You teach constitutional law.
Yes, I'm going to be teaching First Amendment law, in fact, in the fall semester. And it certainly seems to me that the First Amendment is on its deathbed right now. For a number of reasons. You take a look at the structure of the media in the United States, where 6 gigantic corporate conglomerates now control 90% of all the news outlets, whether it's television, cable, radio, or print media, owned by 6 corporate conglomerates. And they have their own agenda, and there's so much censorship. And then you got social media, where there's plenty of censorship. If you're not on board with the establishment narrative on anything, whether it's 5G or the pandemic or anything, you're smeared, called a conspiracy theorist. You're shadow banned. There's all kinds of devices. And then you've got a real journalist like Assange. I mean, somebody who has published so much important information. This used to be the function of major media like the New York Times. You think about the Pentagon Papers. It was the New York Times that published it. It was a turning point in the reporting and the thinking and the discussion in this country on the Vietnam War. And you compare that to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. When they published Collateral Murder, when they came out with those videos that Chelsea Manning had leaked to them, that became a turning point in the way Americans looked at our involvement in Iraq. And this is supposed to be a democracy. It means that the population has to be informed, that our legislators have to be informed. Julian Assange and WikiLeaks has performed such an incredibly important service to the people to try to keep our democracy alive. And they are being punished for this. I'm almost speechless when I try to talk about this, because it really angers me and frustrates me to no end. Somebody just sent me a quote by Abbie Hoffman, who was the great Yippie leader during the Vietnam War, anti-Vietnam War activist. And Abbie Hoffman had said, "You measure democracy by the freedom it gives its dissidents, not by the freedom it gives its assimilated conformists." Well, WikiLeaks and Julian Assange essentially are dissidents because they are speaking truth about what the power establishment is doing. They are speaking uncomfortable truths. And when I say speaking it, it's not even editorializing. They are just reporting facts. They're reporting facts given to them by whistleblowers. We just went through an impeachment where the Democrats all preened about how important it was to protect some whistleblower who had secondhand information about a phone call that the president made to the Ukrainian leader, and they don't seem to give a damn about this whistleblower publisher who has been persecuted for years now, who's giving his life, his health to a cause that is so much bigger than all of us. You know, when I think of words like integrity and commitment, you know, that Julian Assange embodies that. And, you know, again, I'm almost speechless. I don't know what to say, except this is a great travesty of justice. I'm grateful that you have this vigil for him, that you have me on today on that, and this evening on it. And I don't really know what else can be done other than to keep speaking out about it.
So the big question I wanna pose to you, Tim, the U.S. prosecution in Assange's extradition hearing raised the argument that the First Amendment does not apply to foreign nationals. That if you are not a stamped American citizen, then the United States Constitution doesn't apply, but the Espionage Act does. Is there any precedent behind the First Amendment not applying to a foreign national?
It's a good question. I think I focus more on the second part, which is this extra territorial application of the Espionage Act, that we assert we can arrest anyone anywhere in the world. You know, I look at the First Amendment, it's to protect American citizens. It's to protect the consumers of information. Julian Assange, okay, he's an Australian national publishing globally. The internet is a global outlet at this point. The question is, do American citizens have the right to hear what a publisher is publishing on important issues of public policy in the United States? I don't buy this argument that The First Amendment would not protect a foreign publisher publishing in the United States, because, again, it is to protect Americans, to protect our right to hear information, to receive information.
Oh, I'm not muted. Okay, cool. I thought I was muted there. Man, I had something, and I even wrote it down, and now I can't find it. Andrew, will you bail me out here for a sec while I go?
Well, if I could,
Yeah.
I think that one of the interesting things about this, and I'm going to be real direct here. I think Tim kind of mentioned it, but I think it's very important to understand is that if we, by what we're doing with Julian Assange, we're setting a incredibly dangerous worldwide precedent that if you don't agree with what a journalist is saying who's not a citizen of your country anywhere in the world, you as a large, mighty superpower can just swoop them up and detain them indefinitely. And if you look at the process that they're not even using the traditional court route. They're using the blind jury system. The grand jury system. The grand jury system.
And Ian, can I just interrupt just for a moment?
Please go ahead.
It's a grand jury in Northern Virginia. The hometown grand jury there. This is where the CIA is located, Langley, Virginia. So it's not surprising. There's an old saying that a prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. It's not that difficult. And in Northern Virginia, they prosecute more of these espionage cases in Northern Virginia than in any other district in the United States. And, if Assange gets extradited and tried in Northern Virginia, I'm not sure he's going to have a fair jury listening to the case. However, even if he's convicted in Northern Virginia, I can't imagine this going all the way to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court upholding this kind of a conviction. Maybe I'm being naive, but I cannot imagine even this Supreme Court allowing that to happen.
Well, I tend to agree with you on that. The problem is, and you alluded to it, not only is the jury either personally related to or knows someone in the intelligence community, but in these national security cases, John Kiriakou's talked about this a number of times, both on my show and on the Vigil and on Unity for Jay, where the defense doesn't even get access to all of the material being used against their client. The jury themselves will get a redacted version of the transcript. So there will be nonsense words thrown in there, and they'll have to either trust their memory or try to fill in the gaps when they're going over the transcripts in deliberation. It is that in that particular court, the Eastern District of Virginia, they have a 100% conviction rate.
Yep, and the judges are like hanging judges. They really are pro-intelligence agencies.
Yeah, and that's why we've been focusing so hard on trying to stop the extradition, because once he gets here, there's a ridiculous line of thought that's floating around that somehow Julian will be able to disclose once he's brought into the court, and they'll be able to shine some light on what's going on, and that's just simply not the case.
Well, the thing is, what would he disclose? There are people who are hoping he'll disclose that the Russians were not behind hacking the DNC in 2016, that it was an internal leak by a young DNC staffer who was murdered. He's not on trial for that. He's not been indicted for that. He's indicted for allegedly aiding and abetting an internal leaker who was Manning at the time. And helping Manning hack into a Defense Department computer system network. It's been a while since I read the indictment, but my memory serves me. I think that's what the indictment is all about. And I don't think it has a good basis in fact. It would be stretching the law that any time a journalist gives any kind of encouragement for a leaker, that they could be said to be aiding and abetting espionage. And the factual allegation that Assange tried to, in a more material way, help the hacking itself, it doesn't seem to hold any water either. So I hear what you're saying. Yes, there are a lot of people who are almost hoping for the extradition in that it'll be vindication on the DNC hacking. I'm not so sure that will be relevant in any way to a trial of Julian Assange, and I'm very much against this extradition.
So we have about 7 or so minutes before we wrap up and move to news. But we did have a question come in the chat about an earlier conversation for Ian. Are you aware of any of Hawking's funding sources, and is there any actionable evidence that he's taken about where it's come from?
Yeah. Probably not in the way that the audience member wants, but there was something very strange that came up in the Salem, Massachusetts Green Party debate that happened last year. Essentially, and believe it or not, Dario Hunter is the one that leaked this, or said it publicly, that at the time co-chair Miss Merida was also in a dual role, Howie Hawkins' campaign manager. And for those that need to understand this, you have to understand, like down in the Florida debate, she would literally walk up to the stage and say, "Hi, I'm Andrea Merida, and I'm here today as the co-chair of the Green Party, and I'm also here today as the Howie Hawkins campaign manager." And so if we had Tom Perez go on stage last year and say, "Hi, I'm Tom Perez, I'm the DNC co-chair, I'm the DNC chair, but I'm also the Joe Biden campaign manager," people would flip out. Like, they would say, "This is ludicrous. How could you do this?" But it didn't just stop there. The funding problem was that not only did Andrea take money for travel to events where she was representing Hawkins, but she also took money for events, and she was traveling for the campaign for the Green Party. So literally, she'd get double funding to attend things like the Salem, Massachusetts Green Party debate. And I mean, it was just wild to hear that. You know, we were literally paying anyone that donates to the Green Party was funding basically a Hawkins campaign chair, and now a Hawkins campaign manager. It was completely ridiculous. And I just got some insight from a leaker, I guess you could say, in the Green Party, who just exposed an internal document now saying that even though there are a couple other candidates besides just Dario Hunter and Howie Hawkins that are official candidates that are allowed to qualify and be on the ballot, which doesn't even really mean anything because some states still kick them off. Literally, North Carolina, they put one person on the ballot, and that was Howie Hawkins. Even kicked off Dario Hunter. It wasn't really they gave a ridiculous excuse about not having enough signatures or something like that. It was a complete bogus lie. Every other state has at least Dario Hunter on the ballot. But don't worry, they did use ranked choice voting. So you could rank Howie Hawkins and then no preference. So, I mean, there was just lunacy and absurd stuff out there happening behind the scenes that people should be made aware of. Basically the new letter that came out to all the candidates was, even though you officially qualify, we're going to spend party resources given your appeal and your polling numbers, and there are no polling numbers. There's no polling in the Green Party. Doesn't exist. There's delegate count. There's no polling. So no one really knows how popular these candidates are until the election until the primary happens. And then finally, internal resources will be given out based on that. And of course, if you besmirch the Green Party, you will be given less resources. And that has been a particular pet peeve of mine, because folks that say by exposing this or talking about this, you're hurting the Green Party. No, I mean, I'm particularly angry at the Hawkins team, and I'm angry at Green Party insiders who are just doing what the Hawkins team wants uncritically. That's who I'm mad about. I'm not mad at the party. I wish the party would reform itself and be what it claims to be. So I'll leave it there.
So Tim, one final question for you coming from the chat. Is there any action against the U.S. government that civilians can make for the infringement upon civil liberties, specifically in regards to Julian's case? Like, would we be able to file some type of class action lawsuit or something like that against the government for basically weaponizing law against him?
I'm afraid, well, why hasn't there been such an action? I'm afraid there are some legal hurdles. It might not sound like it's fair, but I think a federal court would decline to exercise its jurisdiction in such a lawsuit. They have ample legal tools to decline jurisdiction. They call these prudential screening devices. They would say that a plaintiff does not have standing, cannot show that he or she was either directly harmed by the prosecution of Assange or that the court can give any kind of ample redress. So my guess is it would be a standing barrier. So it's a procedural barrier to asserting such a claim. I have to give more thought to that. I mean, I guess the argument would be there'd be a federal civil rights claim of some sort. But I haven't heard of that kind of a claim in response to a criminal prosecution. But then again, we haven't seen criminal prosecutions against publishers for simply publishing the truth. However, that is the way we characterize it. The way the state characterizes it, or the federal government characterizes it, is that the prosecution isn't for publishing, it's for aiding and abetting a violation of the Espionage Act. So I'm not optimistic that citizens could bring any kind of a lawsuit. It would be expensive to bring a lawsuit. It always is. And I'm not optimistic it would get you anywhere. We're at a tough time right now, aren't we? Where the idea of protesting in the streets about anything, whether it's Assange or anything, is suddenly chilled by the fear of, the quarantining from the pandemic. It is amazing the way the pandemic put a swift end to the protests in Hong Kong and elsewhere. So I'm not sure what avenues are really left, but I'm not optimistic that a lawsuit could work. I'm open to hearing theories, and anyone can email me at tim@timcanova.com. I'm glad to speak to anyone about it, to educate myself and brainstorm with anyone.
Well, we've reached the end of our panel hour. I want to thank both of you gentlemen so much for coming on with this. I had a blast. I don't know about you guys. I had fun. If you could both give us some final thoughts and to reiterate where everyone can find you, that would be fantastic. And just thanks again. And Ian, why don't you kick this off?
Sure. Yeah, the time kind of flew by there. Actually, Tim, I had some constitutional law questions for you. Maybe another time. That'd be a fun topic to go over.
Get in touch with me. I'd love to speak with you.
Yeah, especially during this pandemic and everything. A lot of constitutional questions. Anyway, my website is schlackman.com. I do a twice a week podcast. If you want to check it out right there, schlackman.com. SCHLAKMAN.com. And the only thing I'm really promoting right now is that my mentor and good friend and someone who's been with the Assange folks for a while now, Reverend Annie Chambers, is trying to raise funds to feed the homeless and the poor in inner city Baltimore, where she lives. If you check out her website, anniechambers.org, anniechambers.org. And if you could give anything, we'd really appreciate it. That money goes right to the work that me and my comrades are doing every day, and her literally handing food out to the poor because the government's just not doing it. So thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
And I'd like to also express my thanks. I think this is not the first time I've been on with you, Ian, on an interview. It's great to hear what you have to say and to be on with you again. And I'm grateful for the vigil, for everything that you do to keep Julian's case alive and in everybody's thoughts. Folks can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, email me directly, as I said, at tim@timcanova.com. I urge folks to sign our petition demanding hand-counted paper ballots. You can find the petition at progressforall.org or pinned on the top of my Twitter account. You know, I saw an interesting meme just the other day, and it was for Lolita. Lolita is a orca whale that's been in captivity at the Miami Seaquarium for something like 48 or 49 years now. I've lost track. It's a lot of years, most of this creature's life. And the meme was, if you think it's tough being stuck in quarantine for a day, a week, a month, imagine what it's like to be swimming in the same bathtub for 48 years or something like that. And, you know, I say the same, and I don't mean to trivialize Julian Assange's suffering. I mean to highlight it. Imagine what his quarantine has been like, the sacrifices. How long has he been in captivity, whether it's the Ecuadorian embassy or now in prison? 8 or 9 years now?
It's going on 9 years. We have it in days, and it's 3,418 days of illegal and arbitrary detention.
What this man has suffered and sacrificed for all of us, and what he has given to us in the past. Collateral murder is just the beginning of it. Say a prayer for Julian. I will tonight. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here, Tim, and thank you, Ian. Yeah, this is just fantastic. And if you guys would like to have a conversation together, I would love for that to happen on Slow News Day. Like, I would just, that would be incredibly fun for me. But, you know, selfish, it's my show, whatever. But no, I think that'd be a ball.
I'm in.
Sorry?
I said I'm in.
Sure.
Hell yeah. I'll get in touch with both of you guys on that. That sounds like a party. It does. Right now, I'd really like to thank Unity for Jay for allowing us to stream on the channel tonight. You guys are absolutely amazing. The whole reason we're doing this right now is because when Unity for Jay wound down, there was a space. And we wanted to fill that space with activism and awareness and just, you know, keep hammering home that Julian Assange's life is on the line. Free speech is on the line. The future of press freedom is on the line. The First Amendment is hanging by a freaking thread. And we're not going to stop until this man is free. And we'd also like to give a big shout out to the Don't Extradite Assange campaign. Andrew, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Don't Extradite Assange campaign, actually, I reached out to them this morning, and they said that we would be able to bring the broadcast to you guys through the Action for Assange channels, which also includes, thanks to them, the Unity for J channel as well. So 7 o'clock on Saturday, 7 a.m., we are going to be starting our live stream for the day, because we have multiple events that I'll talk about in a second. With the Don't Extradite Assange campaign's live stream that includes John Pilger, Steph, and Charles Glass. So we are super, super excited to be able to broadcast that to you guys. So mark that down on your calendars, because that is Saturday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then later in the day, we will have, Christopher will be joining the actual Action for Assange crew for our stream at about 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's former member of Parliament Chris Williamson,
Yes.
who ran out on a rail with just the most egregious and sickening propaganda campaign, painting the man as an anti-Semite when he's the furthest thing from that. And it was just one part of the smearing of Jeremy Corbyn on top of that. Chris Williamson is a stand-up gentleman, and he was one of the only voices in the UK Parliament who spoke out on a regular basis about Julian Assange. He actually brought forth a motion to have him released from prison. And in the UK, it's called tabling. It means something different here, obviously. But he tabled a motion for that. Within a week, he was ran out of Parliament.
And then later in the day, actually, we will be having an event in conjunction with the Yellow Vest protest movement in France, where Steve and I are going to be speaking at that. And then we're going to be working with Candles for Assange in New Zealand to see if they can get a stream going in the in-between time between the UK stream and our stream at 1 p.m. So this Saturday is going to be filled with broadcasts. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, we really, really encourage you as early as you can, because 7 a.m. is almost too early for me. But I really look forward to
morning here. I'm not going to make that.
So I'm super appreciative for all of us being able to come together to get these digital marches put out to the internet. But we're going to be moving over here into our news section. And the first thing we're going to be talking about today is something that most everybody knows, but I feel like it's worth putting out there just to kind of show the world. This article was actually dated 3/6/2020. Julian did redact an interview with lawyer and journalist Mark Davis. Sydney Criminal Lawyers.
All right. Let me get my. And I am not muted. That's awesome. All right. Let me go through here. The lineup of renowned Australian journalists on the stage at Martin Place Amphitheater on February 24th was impressive. Gathered for. Okay.
We will be back in just a second. We had some issues with the video cutting out on us.
We're good? All right. Weird. Okay. All right.
You want to take it from the top with this one, Steve?
Yeah, sure. Okay. The lineup of renowned Australian journalists on stage at Martin Place Amphitheater on February 24th was impressive. Gathered for a rally, they included John Pilger, Mary Kostakidis, Quentin Dempster, Wendy Bacon, Andrew Fowler, and Mark Davis. They were there to speak in support of fellow journalist Julian Assange on the first day of his appearance at London's Woolwich Court, in proceedings that will decide whether the Australian citizen will be extradited.
I blame Kevin, but we can keep going with the news at the very least.
All right, let me jump back into that then. Not only is the Trump administration fixing to lock Assange up for the rest of his life, but it has recently revealed that it plans to do so under special administrative measures, which means he'll be completely shut off from the outside world. As each of the rally speakers addressed the crowd, there was a common sentiment expressed, and this was that there's a grave injustice being perpetrated upon an Australian journalist of stature, and there should be much greater public outcry so as to wake the government into action. Mark Davis described the publishing of over 700,000 classified U.S. documents leaked to WikiLeaks by Chelsea Manning as a great act, and he ought to know, as he was present at the bunker in London in 20. Gold walkie for blood money, an investigation into. We're back. We were gone. For how much of that? So here's the nuts and bolts of this. Mark Davis debunked the myth that Julian didn't redact any of the names that were detailed in the leaked files prior to the release of the Afghan war logs, which is the slur that Davis asserts is underpinning much of the reason why Assange now finds himself in such a dangerous position. I don't know if I'm assuming that people familiar with the Vigil now caught the presentation, Sydney Politics in the Pub, that aired on Consortium News. Mark Davies gave about a 20-minute presentation, and it was just absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen that, please, at some point during your week, go to Consortium News and watch that clip. The amount of detail, as well as the visual presentation that accompanies it, is just it's really touching, and it underscores the point that Julian Assange went way above and beyond in trying to make sure that no harm would come to anyone by the release of these documents. Andrew?
Yeah, and it's something that it's actually come out that when he was in the situation that I can't remember which publisher it was, put the key to the WikiLeaks emails to unlock them into his book. Julian spent 24 hours before that release, as soon as he had found out, going through and redacting information himself to make sure that nothing that he thought was sensitive or should be left out, such as like specific people's names and things like that, didn't get put into those. So Julian has a better track record than most media institutions as far as redacting names, but still allowing for actual content and context to come through. Where even when you see redactions that get released in federal government papers and things like that, they'll literally black out an entire page because it's sensitive to the national interest, which is an Orwellian term that essentially says it's going to make corporations lose money and hurt people's feelings if this comes out. So Julian, throughout all of this process, throughout everything he has done in WikiLeaks, has made sure that he's taken steps to protect people.
All right.
Do we want to get to the Pilger video real quick, or do we want to transition into something else first?
No, let's do the El Pais article.
Okay.
Because this is some hectic shit, y'all. I'm at this point you have to be aware of the fair. Maybe you know, I don't know. I don't know what part of your journey you on. There was a security firm called UC Global, or a Spanish firm that was hired by the Ecuadorian government to provide security to the embassy there. And when Lenin Moreno came into power in 2017, the mission of UC Global changed. And that mission was then to provide surveillance to Lenin Moreno, who took it to one of Sheldon Adelson's casinos, and made sure that it got into the hands of the CIA and the Trump administration. So let's get into this. The spying that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was subjected to during the 7 years that he lived at the Ecuadorian embassy in London extended to his most intimate relations. The Spanish security firm UC Global, which had been tasked with protecting the embassy, monitored every visit that Assange received and even investigated whether he might have fathered a child during this period. A few days ago, 37-year-old lawyer named Stella Moritz, who's a member of Assange's legal team, told the Daily Mail on Sunday that Assange is the father of her 2 children, aged 1 and 2. Morris said they were conceived while the WikiLeaks founder was staying at the embassy to avoid extradition to the United States on charges of leaking thousands of classified intelligence documents. David Morales, son of a former military officer who owns the security firm UC Global, is under investigation by Spain's High Court for spying on Assange's meetings with his lawyers and allegedly handing information to the CIA. This is, we know at this point that that's not an allegation. He did, in fact, make sure that this information got to the CIA. And the meetings with his lawyers were taking place at times in the women's bathroom. So UC Global had audio and video in the women's bathroom of that embassy, and they filmed 24 hours a day. Morales suspected that a baby who was repeatedly brought into the embassy by Stephen Hu, an actor friend of Assange's who paid him regular visits, might really be the cyber activist's own child, and these visits were recorded. Morales even issued orders to steal the baby's diapers to analyze the contents for DNA, although the task was never carried out. Reports were drawn up about Stella Morris and about Stephen Hu, according to video and documentary material to which El País has access. It was an employee of the Spanish security firm who alerted Assange's partner about the plans. And look, whatever else this guy did, bless him for speaking out and talking to Stella. They wanted to prove that it was his child in a bid to harm him. Let that sink in. Just take in how fucked up that is. There were talks with 3 Madrid labs to see how the parental connection could be proved. One of them said that DNA cannot be extracted from feces. There was an attempt to take the baby's pacifier, said a former employee of UC Global. This is nightmarish. A company report dated October 27, 2017 details Hu's visits to the Ecuadorian embassy and sheds light on Morales' obsession with getting to the bottom of Assange's best-kept secret during his life as a recluse. That is an oddly worded sentence because he was a political prisoner in that embassy. The report noted Hu always showed up for his visits in the company of a minor that he tells security teams is his own child. The author of the report also wrote that attempts at seeing identification for the child were fruitless and that Stella Morris always arrives a few minutes before Stephen Hu and departs a few minutes after the latter leaves. Although normally she stays for entire days with the host, codename for Assange, and even spends entire nights with him. I want to get your thoughts on this because there's a couple of paragraphs left, and we'll jump back to the one about Morales' arrest. But let's kind of feel this out a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it really just shows the level. It really just shows the level of deep desperation inside of the political establishment, honestly. Because we know that UC Global is funded in whole or part by Sheldon Adelson. That was something that Cassandra Fairbanks had talked with us about, that she had actually gone to the embassy to warn Julian that he was going to be charged for the Manning leaks, most specifically. And you can pull up our other video that we have on the Action for Assange channel to go over that in more detail. But essentially, she got pulled into a room and locked into basically what amounts to a closet within the embassy while they were trying to figure out how the hell she figured this information out, and then was able to get it to Julian. And that's when everything was really solidified for everyone that, like, yes, this is constant audio and video surveillance. And for them to literally move to want to steal a pacifier to get the DNA off of it just shows the utter level of darkness of these people. that they're willing to go as far as thieving a baby's pacifier to figure out if they can hold this as leverage over Julian's head.
Did I mean? No, I didn't mean. Yeah, no. It is just. I mean, darkness is about the right way to put it. Like, there's some just borderline demonic behavior going on there, and when we talked to Cassandra Fairbanks, we found out that within 48 hours of her visiting Julian in the embassy to tell him this, Cassandra was getting messages and texts by oh God, now I'm not going to remember his name. Who is that schmuck's name?
I can't remember the name either. It was the assistant to. It was the assistant to the U.S. ambassador to Germany, because the U.S. ambassador to Germany was the person who principally spearheaded the indictments against Julian.
Yeah. I'm going to have to revisit that interview. And that is a killer, like 25 minutes with Cassandra that we were fortunate enough to run into her because we crashed Alex Jones's Freedom Summit while we were in D.C., which in and of itself is just a series of incredible events. Let's go back to the article to wrap it. Morales was arrested in October and released while the courts investigate him for alleged violations of privacy and attorney-client privilege, besides misappropriation, bribery, and money laundering. And he gets to walk around. The criminal investigation was launched a few weeks after El País revealed video, audio, and documentary material showing that the Spanish company had spied on Assange's meetings with his lawyers and aides. And that's how we know that there was audio and video in the women's bathroom. El País has done incredible work on this, and they deserve a fair amount of credit, because I don't know if we would know this without it. I honestly don't. So if you can go to El País, I'll link the article in my chat at least, and they've got hyperlinks to the rest of their reporting on this issue. What do you want to roll Pilger's video?
Yeah, we can, but real quick, I want to give a couple other people a shout out that deserve some fundraising. As a lot of people know, there is a lockdown on free association right now. For better or worse, I personally think it's for worse, because it's literally stripping liberty from people at the expense of expanding the surveillance state. But there's a lot of independent content creators right now, and a lot of people fighting back against the darkness, so to speak, that need your support. The three big ones and the three biggest friends of the show, Susie Dawson, Elizabeth Mueller, and Jason Burmis. All of them are amazing content creators. Susie is actively in a fight to try to secure asylum up in Russia because she got forced out of New Zealand because of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance and harassment against her. Elizabeth Mueller has been being attacked in her workplace. She's had issues with them messing with bank accounts and just so many other things. And Jason Burmis recently had his entire YouTube channel demonetized. I think it's to the point that he can no longer even accept super chats on the platform, but I'm not entirely positive. So if you guys could, please donate to them. There is Protect Susie, Jason Burmis, and Elizabeth Mueller that really could use support in a time like this. And we're still working on. Cool. The link should be in the show notes for everyone. If not, I'll drop them into chat as well. But yeah, there's a ton of people right now that need support that are intimately connected with the struggle for free speech and a free press. So if you could give them a hand, if at all possible, that would be amazing. And if there's anyone else that you know about that you feel like we should be mentioning, please send us that and we will give them a shout out here as well, because it's not something that we're exclusively trying to promote these three people, but we're just trying to highlight the other struggles that are out there for people that are trying to proliferate factual information. Yes, sir.
Julian Assange. The case of Julian Assange is a test case. It's a test case in so many ways. Now, journalism is on trial. Of course, all this was pertaining to the releases of 2010 and 2011, releases who were exposing war crimes and wrongdoing and exposing corruption in the US in relations to the rest of the world. There is no doubt in my mind that now is the time for revenge. It is not a question of getting any justice. It is raw power being used in a deadly manner. It is like a drone attack by legal means. It is the same element that was used in the assassination of Soleimani in Iraq. It is the same element that we are now seeing more and more when it comes to the United States and its foreign policy. It has lost its legitimacy. It is now simply attacking with brute force on all fronts. And it's scary, and it should be scary to everybody, and it should be recognized by everybody. Now, who can we rely on? Because Julian Assange is a political prisoner, for certain. There is no doubt about it in anybody's mind who actually just looks at the elements of the case. But who can really rely on for support? What about the left? What is left of the left? If we look across the ocean to the United States, we see that Joe Biden is probably going to be the one that the Democratic Party is going to put forth the next fall to try to topple Donald Trump. Joe Biden is the person who in 2010 called Julian Assange a high-tech terrorist, among many others. I don't think there is any way that you could look at any positive from that individual and that office and that party in the event that there is a change in the White House after the election next fall. On the UK front, we have a new leadership in the opposition. Keir Starmer is now taking leadership in the Labour Party. He was, of course, the head of the Crown Prosecution Service at the time when that office was actively engaging in a
Okay. So WikiLeaks editor Kristen Franson making some incredibly salient points, and we talk a lot on the show about how this case represents a fundamental loss of liberty, and at the moment we are all experiencing the loss of liberty that Julian Assange has experienced for 8.5 years. We don't have free assembly. If you all over social media, and especially here on YouTube, if you post something or your content is outside of the narrative when you're discussing COVID 1984, they'll do you like they did Jason Burmis or Ryan, Last American Vagabond. He got demonetized or completely demonetized as well. My own show is ridiculously suppressed, which is why I'm really stoked that I will now be a part of the Rockfin. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, the comparison for the prosecution of Julian being the equivalent of a extrajudicial drone strike, I think, is really spot on, if not going far enough. And it's something that it's brutally true. As you examine his case and you look into the way that he's been treated, they're literally completely ignoring all of the rules of engagement, or in this case, the rule of law for how judicial process works, simply to show that they have the power to do it. And in Julian's case, one of the biggest things that I remember from that first week of the extradition hearing was, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, when the court actually ordered Christian out of the courtroom and then let him back in and then threatened to order him out of the courtroom again simply to show that they have the power to do that and that there is nothing that can be done to stop them from abusing the law in the way that they are. So I think his statements are as true can be in regards to what's happening to Julian right now. Because as they're essentially taking out the bulwark to free speech, which is WikiLeaks, but they still continue to publish and they still continue to do great work. Just in the time that we've been doing these vigils, we've seen the fish rot come out, as well as the OPCW leaks, multiples of them. And to the people that aren't really aware, and I'm sure most of us that are viewing this are, but the leaks from the OPCW, it's showing the truth about a previous event, but it's also trying to get ahead of the next false flag, because Syria has had staged gas attacks followed by American retaliatory strikes in the same month every year for multiple years in a row, just as a way to show that the United States has the ability to violate international law and spin propaganda to their side. So I would like to commend WikiLeaks for those OPCW reports, because even as people talk about it, they, not that it's intentional or unintentional, but they forget to mention, oh, and these OPCW reports came from WikiLeaks and came from Christian being the editor of WikiLeaks at that time. So I think that that's really important to point out, is they're still fighting back in the ways and means and capacity that they have. And the fact that they're trying to get ahead of the next false flag, where no one else really in media is trying to lead the charge in anything like that, maybe short of Jimmy Dore, because he was one of the first people to be willing to publicly call bullshit on these strikes, speaks a lot to the fact that we have the ability to push and fight back against this.
Yeah, Jimmy Dore was great on that. Caitlin Johnstone was way out in front. Me, you know, it smelled funny to me. It did not pass the smell test. I was screaming
Kind of
about
like the backpack.
add a new channel, and you know, I just don't have the platform that Jimmy Dore does. But you know, Aaron Mate was recently on his show and admitted that Jimmy was right. The people that were speaking out about this all along were right. He had to be convinced, and was finally convinced by the second or third drop in October or November of last year. I get it. I do, you know, but after the first leak in the summer of last year, that should have been enough to not only convince Aaron Mate, but every other careerist journalist that's out there. And when you go and you do your show, or you go and you write your article, it is paramount that you mention WikiLeaks as the outlet that gave you this information. People are afraid to talk about Julian Assange. People are afraid to mention WikiLeaks. And that fear is rooted in loss of income, or loss of liberty. But we're running out of First Amendment. We're running out of free speech. It is time to stick your neck out. It is time to stand up for this. Right?
And something to his credit, something to give Aaron props on, is he was one of the people at the head of debunking Russiagate as far as popular, mainstream-esque, still independent media goes. So he did a great job at making sure that he meticulously blew holes in every piece of that propaganda story as it came out.
Oh yeah, he absolutely shredded the journos that were pushing it, man. Like,
yeah, and even still recently, because it's to the point that the editor-in-chief, and this is something we don't have the story queued up or anything, the editor of The Intercept is still pushing Russiagate and apologizing essentially for the Mueller report that oh, the standards were too high and the administration wasn't smart enough to show Russian collusion. Instead of saying, hey, we got it wrong, this whole thing's bullshit, Julian Assange needs to go free, and putting out a defense in regards to him. And that's one of the leaders at The Intercept. So I'd just like to point out to people that be careful of the sources you watch, the people you listen to. And as Julian puts it so eloquently, there are no heroes, there are just heroic actions. Which, to give a transition into this next part and give a little interlude here, don't be afraid to be a one-person protest. Since the beginning of our vigils, we've advocated for the idea of decentralized activism, that each person should do what they can with the time, money, and resources that they have to promote whatever cause it is that they're fighting for. I'm assuming the people viewing this evening are fighting for Julian Assange. If you're in the UK, you get to leave your house legally once per day. Use that time and space to walk and put up posters as you go down. So the next time a family leaves their house for that one time a day, they can see those that say free Julian, jail war criminals, Julian Assange is a POW, and so forth. Another great way of single person protesting that we've seen is vehicles. People literally just get in their car, throw some banners on it, drive slowly through a neighborhood honking to raise attention. If you're someone that has a speaker in your car that you can hook up to a microphone, or can get a literal speaker to put in your trunk that you can hook up to a microphone, use that to drive through a neighborhood and tell the truth about what's going on with the prosecution of Julian Assange, because people will come out and hear it. If you're someone that has a couple friends that also support Julian, and before this you were taking action, don't be afraid to do a car protest, where you get out and you drive around a specific area. Local media stations are wonderful to try to raise awareness about this. If we could, though, I'd like to jump over to the Twitter post that we have. I think it's one of our only ones from Twitter with the John Pilger video. It's about 2 minutes long, and it really gives a good perspective on what's happening to Julian right now. The one that's titled Pilger video, it's the Twitter post by the DEA campaign. Yeah, sorry, there's two tweets by the DEA campaign in our show doc for tonight. Sorry.
In Belmarsh prison. When I first saw Julian in Belmarsh prison almost a year ago, I was shocked by how much older he looked. He had lost between 10 and 15 kilos. His arms were like sticks. He whispered to me, "I think I'm going out of my mind." "No, you're not," I said. "Look how you frighten them, how powerful you are." Julian's intellect, his resilience, his courage, his warmth, and his wicked sense of humor are, I believe, protecting him. I hope they are. Breaking him is clearly the goal. The cruelty of the extradition judge, the endless strip searching and handcuffing, and now there's the cruelty of being refused bail in a prison that's almost certainly infested with coronavirus. Never forget, Julian has committed no crime, nor has he been prosecuted for any crime. He has served a vindictive sentence for a breach of bail. There is no reason to keep him locked up. The indictment in America is made up of concocted charges under an act of Congress hurriedly passed in 1917 as a device to silence anti-war dissenters known as conscientious objectors. In other words, Julian is a political prisoner. There is no other description. His crime is to have offended and embarrassed great power as an agent of people and truth. That's a definition of real journalism, not the fake version we are subjected to day after day. When I last said goodbye to Julian in the visiting room at Belmarsh Prison and began the long journey through a maze of iron doors, I look back, as I always do. Julian sat alone, his fists clenched and held high.
So John Pilger outlines it absolutely beautifully, where he talks about how afraid they are of Julian for his intellect and his courage. And it's to the point that just the mention of his name makes people in the halls of power tremble and get angry because of what he has done to expose the darkness that is behind the scenes of what we call the American way of life. And one of the biggest statements from Julian and WikiLeaks, the WikiLeaks shop actually just held a t-shirt contest getting people to design more, is the fact that courage is contagious. And I would like to add to that that courage is far more contagious than the coronavirus. So don't be afraid to be that one person that stands up, because right now is more pivotal than ever to be that one voice.
Look, and here's the thing. You aren't one voice. There is a community of people who have been speaking out about this, some of them for years and years and years. And Pilger is one of those guys. Pilger is a stone cold badass, man. And along with Craig Murray, whose presence in the courtroom for Julian Assange's case management hearings is sorely missed, because his summations of what happened day by day during the first week of the extradition hearing, they gave me life, man. That guy was on it. I want to kind of highlight what he was saying though about Vanessa Baraster, because this judge, first of all, has no business presiding over the case. Her bias is beyond clear. The way that she smiles and nods to the Crown prosecutor and just sort of goes along with whatever the U.S. State Department is asking for. The fact that she comes to court with prepared statements, so that when the attorneys are done, there's no moment of reflection or consideration on her part. She just picks up what she wrote and reads off of it, decision made before any of the proceedings began. This is a show trial. This is a sham. Literal kangaroos would be more objective in this fucking kangaroo court. And for Vanessa Baraster's, I don't know, style, she got added to the website Wikispooks. If we could pull that up, Sleepy Josh, that would be fantastic. So let's kind of go through this a little bit. Vanessa Baraster serves as a district judge at Westminster Magistrates Court, where on 21st October 2019, she refused to extend Julian Assange's UK extradition proceedings, telling Assange his full extradition case would begin on 24th February. Having summarily dismissed Julian Assange's bail application, Baraster ruled on 7th April of 2020, that was a week ago and a couple of days, that the names of Assange's partner and young children could be published in the interest of open justice. Juan Passarelli tweeted, "The fluidity in which Judge Vanessa Baraster delivered her ruling concerning the identity of Assange's partner and children is almost as if she had already given it thought and written her ruling yesterday in her North London mansion with a glass of white wine." Just saying. On 28th October, John Pilger described the disturbing scene inside a London courtroom the previous week when the WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange appeared at the start of the landmark extradition case that will define the future of free journalism. The worst moment was one of a number of worse moments. I have sat in many courtrooms and seen judges abuse their position. This judge, Vanessa Baraster, actually she isn't a judge at all, she's a magistrate, shocked all of us who were there. Her face was a progression of sneers and imperious indifference. She addressed Julian with an arrogance that reminded me of a magistrate presiding over apartheid South Africa's race classification board. When Julian struggled to speak, he couldn't get words out, even stumbling over his name and date of birth. When he spoke, truth. And when his barrister spoke, barrister contrived boredom. When the prosecuting barrister spoke, she was attentive. She had nothing to do. It was demonstrably preordained. In the table in front of us were a handful of American officials whose directions to the prosecutor were carried out by his junior back and forth. This young woman went delivering instructions that there is no rule of law. There is no legal system. This is a clear case of is the definition of a show trial. I'm going to skip down a little bit and just kind of highlight this part. I don't want to read the whole article, but danger to the public. Vanessa Barriester is under a clear instruction to mimic concern by asking near the end of every session before we break away if Julian is feeling well and whether he would like a break. She then routinely ignores his response. Yesterday, he replied at some length. He could not hear properly in his glass box, the freaking human zoo cage that they put him in, away from his attorneys where he couldn't have contact with them. At some point yesterday, they had started preventing him passing notes to his counsel, which I learned was the background to the aggressive prevention of his shaking Balthasar Garzon's hand goodbye. This is, if you want to know what a travesty of justice is, you don't have to look any fucking further than what's happening to Julian Assange.
Yeah, I mean, it's straight up. The decision has already been made. She reads everything from pre-prepared statements, even when it is an oral only, not pre-submitted argument, such as the bail hearing, where she'll literally listen, not really pay attention. The prosecution will talk and she'll be their best friend like it outlined. And then she'll pull out her nice little piece of paper and read what it is that she wrote or someone else wrote for her to read off. We had judges in Julian's case that literally walked to the back of the room, met with a group of U.S. attorneys and prosecutors, walked up to the front of the room and gave the decision that they were supposed to make. And right now the UK's fighting to get out of Brexit to reclaim its sovereignty. But what the hell is it doing to reclaim its sovereignty from the American empire?
It's a Five Eyes country. Mm-hmm. There's a global intelligence apparatus that runs governments. Governments don't run intelligence agencies. It's not the way this works. And the Five Eyes nations, the United States, Canada, the UK, New Zealand, and Australia, act in concert, in absolute lockstep. And there's really no forethought. It's a foregone conclusion. Which is why it's so goddamn necessary to have bodies in the street. It's so necessary to raise hell across social media. And look, if you're feeling like you're the only person, if you're feeling like you are lost in the wilderness, Action for Assange has a Discord server. We can put a link to that in the chat. We want to add your voices to our voices because we need to get loud.
Absolutely. And that really sums it up best. And the hope is by having the Discord server and by doing these vigils, that we can encourage more activism. Even if you're attending another protest, like throughout the country now, if you've been watching the Ron Paul Liberty Report or the Corbett Report or a lot of other free thinking media channels, They're talking about anti-lockdown protests that are going on across the country. If you have a chance to go to one of them, because it is a defense of the First Amendment, free association and freedom of religion are tied to the same legal doctrine as the freedom of the press. If you have the chance to go to those and you decide to take a sign with you, on the front, write about what you're protesting for. On the back, write "Free Julian Assange," or wear an Assange shirt. And when you're there, talk to the people, because there are protests still happening. So I'd like to point everybody to the Ron Paul Liberty Report to check out his coverage of the actual protests against the lockdowns that are happening right now. But I think we have one article left to go over, and this is something that WikiLeaks has been putting out on Twitter quite a bit. And it's titled "Agencies Can Launch Retaliatory Investigations into Whistleblowers, Court Rules." And we got that up on screen for everybody right now. Federal agencies can launch retaliatory investigations against employees who blew the whistle on wrongdoings without violating anti-reprisal law. A federal court says in a precedent-setting ruling, while agencies cannot dock pay, deny promotions, or engage in several other retaliatory personnel actions against whistleblowers, investigating a worker who has attempted to shed light on inappropriate or illegal behavior is allowable, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit said. Federal whistleblowers have long complained agencies seek to turn the tables on them in an effort to discredit their claims or remove them from their position. The case involved Leonard Sikis, who served as the director of the VA facility in Denver. Sikis made multiple disclosures to the VA Inspector General, protected under the whistleblower law, raising concerns about the agency's spending and contractual anomalies. In 2014, Sitek was interviewed by an administrative investigation board examining inappropriate office relationships, during which he realized he himself was subject to an investigation. He notified the IG that he suspected this was a retaliatory action for whistleblowing. Later that year, the board cited Sikis for failing to report that a colleague had inappropriate sexual relationship with a colleague's subordinate. The VA issued a letter of reprimand. So the federal government now, through this case, has essentially allowed 4 whistleblowers who are using the terrible as they are available channels to blow the whistle as a way to now launch investigations to reprimand and write up and ultimately remove these employees from positions of power, because they don't want anyone within the system that is willing to challenge it. Getting back into the article, in early 2015, the VA rescinded Sik's letter and stuck it in his record. Later that year, the IG validated 2 of his claims, struck it, 2 of the claims of his department's wrongdoing. Brought a case before the Merit System Protection Board, arguing that the VA retaliated against him for blowing the whistle. An MSPB administrative judge, however, ruled in the VA's favor, leading him to appeal the decision in a federal circuit court. To qualify for relief under the whistleblower law, employees must demonstrate their agency took a qualifying personal action, such as a denial of an appointment or a pay decision or other significant change in duties and working conditions. The MSPB judge ruled and the appeals court subsequently affirmed that a retaliatory investigation in and of itself does not qualify as a personnel action eligible for corrective action. Under the Whistleblower Protection Act, the court stated further that Congress acted purposefully in excluding retaliatory investigations from prohibited behavior under the law.
Look, we know that we know that there's been a war on whistleblowers forever. It ramped up significantly during the Obama administration. There have been token pieces of legislation that are poorly written with a lot of loopholes in it. One of Ro Khanna brought it forward and was, you know, getting a lot of good ink from quote unquote progressive media about it. Hey, look, Ro Khanna's got to protect the Whistleblowers Act, and, you know, it's going to help Julian Assange. And then when he was asked directly by Ryan Grim, he said, oh no, this would not help Julian Assange. And people still think that Ro Khanna's legislation would do that. Look, right now, in the 2020 NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, under the umbrella of terrorism, hacktivists, leaktivists, and public disclosure outlets are added to that category. Right now, what we're doing could get us in trouble under the NDAA. It's the worst NDAA since the 2012 one, which legalized propaganda and erased the Smith-Mundt Act. And also in that one, the 2012 one was indefinite detention of U.S. citizens if it falls under the rubric of terrorism, which now hacktivists, leaktivists, and public disclosure outlets do. We live in a fucking cartoon.
And it also allows them, that NDAA 2012, if I remember properly, to remove U.S. citizenship and to deny due process and habeas corpus. And essentially what that means is the government can disappear you without any rhyme or reason, or provide whatever cover story they want for why they did it. And we're living in an age now where you have Bill Gates and Fauci directing government policy about how to expand the surveillance state to give up liberty and protect security. One of the things that they're proposing is literal all-the-time GPS tracking of everybody, and having a government app that enables Bluetooth to communicate device to device to see who you were close to. And if someone you were close to, like physical proximity, was or could have been in contact with someone that may or may not have had the coronavirus, they're proposing a national application that people will have to install on their phones that will say, you are not allowed to leave your house under a 14-day quarantine, but not provide you with the rhyme or reason of who you came in contact with, or who you came in contact with that came in contact with someone. And it's just a matter of time before we are literally placed in house arrests as activists and leaktivists and a public disclosure organization, such as a simple YouTube channel, because the crimes against free speech have become so immense at this point that we are all Julian Assange. And that's a statement, and I've said this a billion times, and it's probably old at this point, but there was a long time where people were saying that they're not after Julian Assange, they're after us, and he was just in the way. And now that the entire world essentially has been placed under house arrest and in the same restrictions that he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, that has never been more true. And as one last final plug here, please use encrypted applications. There's a ton of them out there. Signal, Telegram, Wire, Riot are great for messaging, and a lot of them also support video chats. You can use the Tor browser or other encrypted browsers to help protect your anonymity online. This is not a paid product placement, but there is, short of having a quantum computer, the belief that encryption helps stop mass surveillance efforts, at least in a way, because as they're scraping information from public nodes and literally putting all of everyone's information into these supercomputers to analyze public dissent, that level of encryption gives you some protection for what you're doing, because they have to individually target you under the current system of belief to understand what you are doing and saying to your friends. So if you can get your friends to download an encrypted app to literally just bullshit and share memes, that takes a human effort to break that. And if we can get enough people using encryption and off of things like Facebook Messenger and standard SMS, we create a space in the platonic realm of the internet that requires more and more and more power and human effort to actually break into. But I would like to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, especially Unity for Jay for allowing us the use of their platform. And again, this Saturday, kicking off at 7 a.m. Here Eastern Time, 4 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. if you're over in, or noon, I believe, if you're over in the UK. The Don't Extradite Assange campaign is starting the world off with a streaming event. We'll be following it up with multiple others on our channel, including one with the Yellow Vest protesters and our personal interview with Chris Williams, the former MP. Williamson. I always get his name wrong and I apologize. But you can find us on Twitter at action_4 Assange. You can find me personally at Andrew Zigmund. That's ZIGMUND. And I would just like to thank everybody for watching, and especially thank Ian and Tim for coming back on again.
If you're just seeing me for the first time, my name is Steve Poikinen. I host a show called Slow News Day, which you can find here on YouTube by typing Slow News Day Podcast into the search bar. It's like a Tribe Called Quest. You got to say the whole thing. I do independent media, like truly independent media. I don't use mainstream material for my baseline content. If I can get the journalist who writes the articles that I highlight on my show for an interview, I will do that. Very recently, I've had Whitney Webb and Elizabeth Voss. Both of them will be coming back onto the show soon. Both of them do groundbreaking and phenomenal work. Huge thanks to Tim Canova and to Ian Schlackman. Huge thanks to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos, and Andrew for being with us for week 41. We have been doing this for 41 weeks straight. The amount of content that we have created in the last 9 months is truly significant, and we have been able and just so lucky and fortunate to have wonderful guests. You guys who are watching, you make it. We love you very, very much. And we will see you Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific